consent's carried. And then the other one, on a minor nature, I've been liaising with Linley and Morris, who are in the back, who are affected residents from Waitohi in regard to the broken pipeline for some time, and I just want to deal with that under minor nature, but I was going to bring that to the front just so we could have a conversation. I've briefed Andrew just to give us an update on where that's at for the residents, because I've got some concerns. It's been a long time and they've been on effectively a boil water notice. So so is everyone comfortable with that as far as the minor nature item? So we'll deal with that now. So Andrew, could you please pop up and we'll just get an update on Waitohi Pipeline. Probably the key thing for residents would be the timeline around where that's going to be. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the status of the pipeline at the moment is that all the resource consents have been obtained, which is all 7 of them. And we pipe supply we purchase separately as a council in order to accelerate the construction of this job, and that has been delivered to the site. We are still waiting on delivery of fittings, and the construction of the pipeline is currently out of tender at the moment, and that will be closing in a couple of weeks' time. We have had pre-site meetings with the contractors, and yeah, we believe we'll get some tenders in the appropriate time and hopefully at a good price too. So the job will be finished probably into July, to be honest, and that's subject to weather. If we get major river flows, then we won't be able to actually work in the river, because part of the role is actually moving the river, doing dewatering, etc., to actually construct the pipeline.
Cool. So I guess you can understand.
Yes, so the water that's being supplied to the Waitohi residents is the same water as they've had for many, many years. It's just that we have a new drinking water standards now, and although the water, and we test it regularly to prove that there is no bacterial in the water, no coliforms, etc., there is a risk of a protozoa, which is your Giardia, Cryptosporidium, and the treatment system in the Waitohi plant is unable to treat that. So that's now the drinking water standards now, new ones, require that there is protozoa protection, and if not, then a precautionary boil water notice is put on. So that's exactly what we've had to do. Now, it's unfortunate that pipeline under the river got a hole in it, it blew, because otherwise residents would be actually supplied with the new water from the Downlands plant, the Te Angawai, which is of course totally compliant. So once we get this pipeline replaced, the water will flow, the Waitohi plant will be basically turned off, and they will have fully compliant water with no boil water notice.
And so
So, yeah, the consenting took a long time, and it wasn't the processing of the consent. That was actually done by ECAM relatively quickly. It was the application that was required for that consent. So we had to do, we had to develop, we had to first identify bats, and we actually had to trace them, where they were nesting, where they were going. We actually got lovely pictures of them flying from tree to tree. We had to do that. We had to do, of course, identify lizards. We had to do a complete fish and eel study as well. in the river to find it and identify all the fish and the wildlife that's there. And there was also the bird side of things now. That's why, so there was a lot of ecological assessments that had to be done. We also had to do an archaeological one, of course, as well. Now, as a consequence of that, we did actually find quite a lot of wildlife, including bats. So we had to develop just recently, well, beforehand, before part of the consent application, but a bat management plan, a lizard management plan, an eel management plan, a salmon management plan, all through these to support the consent. So and we're having to, of course, comply with all these management plans as well. They had to be signed off by DOC too, so that took time. So it's extremely complex. It's very time consuming, and I must say can be very frustrating. I can understand the residents' perspective, but this is the law.
Yeah, look, and finally, because I've been asked to raise it, what's your thoughts on, and I understand precedent setting, but it's been raised to me around, rates for emissions, rebates, cost of boiling water, all those sort of things. I guess for me, if I was to apply that, if we had a natural disaster or something and let's use, any of the townships that have a larger population in that regard and had to put a boil water notice over a large population, and the same precedent might apply. So, if you're going, I guess the challenge with those sorts of things is if you're going to do it, how do you do it for all, and what are the criteria and around that? I actually don't think something, from what I can see, something such as this fits within our rates remission policy. But I understand, I'm getting a nod, is that right? But I understand, the frustration, it's been raised to me that although it's precautionary boil water notice, there concerns if someone's elderly and, they don't need to get, a bug that, might, potentially hospitalise them. So it is a sort of challenging space, but I just want us to, have you got any thoughts on that, Andrew?
With rural schemes, sometimes they do fall out of non-compliance, and we've had boil water notice, for instance, down at St Andrews, in Pariora. It does happen. That was due to high nitrates. So to offer a rebate on every time there is a boil water notice on a compliant cook would be difficult because it's just basically administering that for a start. How much rebate do you give? 90% of the costs, of course, are fixed generally. I guess also the other analogy I can think of is it's the same as someone living on an unsealed road versus a sealed road. They're still paying the same rates. It's a different level of service, but they're still paying the same rates. So at the end of the day, the cost of that scheme, for instance, in Downlands has been costed with all those residents receiving that water, and it is only a short-term thing.
Yeah. This isn't normal process, but I will just let Lindley have a minute. Pop up to this microphone here, Lindley.
It's been 2 years. It's been 2 years. Short term.
Grab a seat. Can you sort the microphone for her? Thanks.
And we've been on a boil white notice now. We've got it one. Do you know how long we've been on the boil white notice for? And do you know how much people have been paying, how much people have costed? And then you tell us it's precautionary after you've been boiling your water for a year, and then to find out, it's the same as it's always been. How would you feel about that? How would you feel about that? And it's costing a lot of money. But it's cost everyone a lot of money. You're welcome to drink some of our water if you like. Go on. Here you go. There is a small chance you might die from it, though. Oh, go on then. Oh, shush. We want some money back. We're paying. It's a human rights to get water. And I've asked people, can you bring us some drinking water? You've refused right from the start. No.
No, look, what I will say is that it was always a precautionary boil water notice, wasn't it? Yeah. The question has been raised, as far as communication, and this is an interesting one when you've got a small group of users, and Morris mentioned to me yesterday, not everyone's on the internet. So, Facebook and, the internet and, FAQs and those sort of things aren't always, the right media. So I think that the challenge for us is if there's a small community affected, it needs to probably be direct mail. It's, it's about that comms engagement discussion we had this morning. How do we, when there's an issue, how do we get to the problem? Yeah, no, and it's not perfect. Yeah, yeah. No, that's right. But sorry, I will have order. Andrew, thanks. And then we'll finish this up.
Yeah, I think the point needs to be made is that, this council has invested about $25 million to upgrade this scheme. And that, we're nearly there. And once we get this pipeline under supplying the water from the Downland scheme, there won't be any boil water notices from now on.
For another 3 months.
Yeah.
And until the meantime, you can supply us with water. We supplied to Maru when they had problems with water straight away. You've got tankers out here. But for us out there, we've asked for that. No. Yeah.
Do you want tankers?
No, I want some money back. Yes, Ted,
Yeah.
sure we do. Of course we do. We want fresh water to drink.
Yeah.
We don't really want the money back. We just want the job to hurry up. 2.5 years.
That's right.
The time this whole thing's been all up.
Yeah, no, that's right. You have had the opportunity. We'll move that on now, but we take your point and thank you for the gift, Linley, of water.
Everyone's welcome to have some.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Yeah, no worries. So we will move on and appreciate that, but I just think it's quite important that we do, acknowledge these concerns, and it's important that, when we have an issue, how do we deal with them in a, well, it's probably around the communication, because I don't understand the frustrations, but some of these things, when it's so complex, you can't necessarily speed it up. But what does communication look like? So, we don't have frustrated residents. But we'll move on now because we've got a big agenda in front of us. I think we've had some public forum by default. We now move to conflicts of interest. Is there any conflicts of interest in the existing